welcome to the deep dive. We take stacks of your sources, like all those articles and stuff you send us, and pull out the good stuff.
Yeah, the interesting parts.
Exactly. Like a shortcut to being, like, well-informed, right?
Your knowledge guides.
Haha. That's a good one. Okay, so this time you guys sent us a ton of stuff about surviving in, like, the Arctic.
Extreme cold.
Yeah. And not just, like, basic survival, but also climate change up there, some DIY stuff.
Even a documentary about making beer in the Arctic.
Yep. That one sounds fun. So we're going to try and connect everything and see what we can learn.
Maybe even have some aha moments along the way.
Okay, so first up, how cold does it actually get up there? We've got this article from the Army about soldiers training in Alaska, and one of them, this guy, Lucas Baylor, he says, I don't have a lot of body mass, so I wondered how I'd fare in the cold.
You think?
Ha ha, right. It's got to be brutal.
I mean, we're talking negative 65 Fahrenheit sometimes.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, super dangerous.
Yeah.
The human body.
Yeah.
It's vulnerable at those temps.
It makes this other thing we found even more interesting, though, this thing from Alaska Defense about these Arctic shelters.
Those are wild.
Yeah, they can keep it 70 degrees inside, even when it's negative 65 OUT.
It's incredible what tech can do.
Imagine using that, like, everywhere, for all kinds of tough environments.
It makes you wonder, though, right? How sustainable is that, really?
Well,
and, like, can everyone in the Arctic even get access to it?
Especially with everything changing so fast up there because of climate change.
Yeah.
We even have this article from CBS News about, get this, a 100.4 degree day in the Arctic Circle back in 2020.
Whoa, no kidding.
Things are heating up way too fast. It's what we call Arctic amplification, which basically means it's warming faster there than anywhere else on Earth.
And that affects everyone, not just the Arctic, right?
Totally. Global weather, sea levels, the whole thing.
So all this info about staying warm up there, it's suddenly feeling really relevant, even if we're not all planning like an Arctic trip.
So let's talk practical tips. What stands out to you from those survival guides?
Well, first, got to mention layering.
Yeah, that Outward Bound blog was all about that.
So important.
Absolutely. And definitely NO cotton, right?
Nope. Gets wet, loses all its warmth. Got to go with wool or synthetic fabrics.
Smart. It's all about trapping those warm air layers close to your body.
Exactly. And speaking of important, don't forget your extremities. Hands, feet, head, all got to be protected.
Oh, yeah. We had that French guide talking about that.
Key stuff.
Warm hat, good gloves, insulated boots. Seems basic, but I bet it's easy to forget when you're focused on the big picture.
Easily.
Yeah.
Got to minimize those heat escape points.
One thing I was surprised by was how much everyone talked about staying hydrated.
Really?
Yeah, in the cold. I wouldn't have thought about it.
It's counterintuitive, I know. But you still lose water, even when it's freezing, like through breathing, even sweating a little.
Oh, interesting.
Dehydration makes you way more susceptible to cold-related problems.
Okay, makes sense. So layering, extremities, hydration, all checked. What about food?
Oh, super important. The French guide was very clear about that. Food equals fuel, and your body needs a ton of calories just to stay warm up there.
Right. Makes sense. It's working overtime.
Exactly. Now, the next big question, fire. Got some stuff about the dough drill method.
Oh, yeah, but there was that huge Reddit debate about whether it's even worth trying. Right?
Oh, totally. Lots of opinions on that.
Yeah.
I think it depends. If you're in a true survival situation, no other options, yeah, the bow drill could save your life.
That's tough to master, right?
It's not easy. Takes practice, specific materials, even upper body strength.
That Reddit thread was saying it could take forever and be super tiring, especially if you're not used to it.
Totally agree. But if you're really serious about spending time in extreme cold, it might be worth the effort to learn.
Yeah. I guess it all comes down to your own needs and how much risk you're willing to take.
Exactly. All right, moving on to shelter. We've got these French articles about building basic ones from branches, insulation, that kind of thing, to block the wind.
It's pretty different from those high-tech Arctic shelters, right?
Yeah, night and day.
But, like, the basic goal's the same, right? Keep you safe from the elements.
Exactly. It shows how humans are so creative when it comes to surviving, you know? From simple stuff to crazy technology, it's all about finding a way.
Speaking of creative, we have to talk about that DIY soda can heat exchanger.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's like straight out of MacGyver.
Totally. The source even had like step-by-step instructions, soda cans, some PVC pipe, computer fans, boom, heat exchanger.
And it can work for cooling too, right?
That's the cool part.
It's amazing what people can do with like everyday stuff. Makes you think about all the sustainable solutions out there just waiting to be discovered.
Totally.
So we've talked about like staying physically warm and safe in the Arctic, but what about the mental side? It's got to be tough mentally with the cold and being so isolated, right?
Oh, for sure. That climate generation article was big on staying calm and supporting each other, like as a team.
It's going to be easy to freak out in that kind of environment.
Totally. Staying positive, focusing on what you need to do, and having people around you, it all helps, both mentally and physically.
Teamwork makes the dream work, or, keeps you alive in the Arctic.
Something like that. We saw that team spirit in the Army article, too, about how the soldiers would, make these big meals together.
Even in the middle of training, huh?
Yeah. It becomes a ritual, a way to bond and get some warmth beyond just, the fire.
I like that. Okay, and then there's that documentary, Arctic Alchemy.
Oh, yeah. About brewing beer in the Arctic.
Seriously, that's wild.
It's about friendship, passion, and, pushing limits.
Yeah.
The whole film follows their trip, the challenges of brewing up there, but also how strong their bond is, how they never give up.
Sounds inspiring.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think about, the bigger picture of how climate change is impacting everyone in the Arctic, not just adventurers.
Definitely. So it brings us back to that question, right? How are traditional survival skills changing with the Arctic changing? Are they, less important now or more? Or are they evolving somehow?
That's a good one.
Yeah. It feels like up there, the past and present are clashing in a really big way.
Okay.
You've got ancient skills, like the bow drill, and then you've got, the cutting-edge Arctic shelters.
It's a lot to consider.
Definitely. And that's where we'll pick up next time on part 2 of our deep dive.
Stay tuned. We've got more to uncover. Back again for more deep dive. We're still up north, figuring out what it takes to not just survive, but actually thrive in the Arctic.
Right. We've talked about, what to wear, staying hydrated, even that crazy soda can heat exchanger thing.
Yeah. And how those super advanced Arctic shelters compare to, building your own basic shelter.
Exactly.
But I'm kind of stuck on that question we left off with, the Arctic is changing us so fast. So what's it going to take to make a future there that actually works?
It's a big question, no doubt. We were just talking about those Arctic shelters, right? Keeping it 70 degrees inside, even when it's negative 65 out.
It's crazy impressive. But, part of me wonders, are we just relying on tech too much? To solve all the problems, even climate change?
It's a good point. Remember that article from CBS News about the 100-degree day in the Arctic Circle?
Yeah, wild.
Climate change isn't some future thing, It's already messing with the Arctic, big time.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that thing, Arctic amplification, right? Where it's warming up there faster than anywhere else.
Yep. And when it gets warmer, the ice melts, exposes the ocean, which is darker, so it absorbs even more heat, melts even faster. It's a vicious cycle.
Whoa, that's scary.
Yeah, that could be bad news for the whole planet.
So it's are we just trying to cover up the problem with fancy tech, like those shelters, but not actually fixing anything?
That's a key question. They provide shelter, yeah, but what about the environment? How much energy do they use? And can everyone who needs them actually get one? It might not be the best long-term solution.
So what else can we do? Should we be looking back in time at how people lived in the Arctic before all this technology?
There's definitely a lot we can learn from indigenous communities up there, They've been living sustainably in the Arctic for generations. They understand that ecosystem.
It makes me think about that Reddit debate about the bow drill.
Oh, yeah. For starting fires.
Right. Some people were like, that's useless now. And others were like, no way. It teaches you to be resourceful.
Totally. Learning skills like that, fire, shelter, weather patterns, it connects you to nature in a different way.
It's like we've lost touch with some of that basic survival stuff and how to deal with tough environments.
And that disconnect, I think, is part of why climate change is such a big problem. If we don't feel connected to nature, it's hard to care for it.
Yeah, I see that. But are you saying we all need to become survival experts now?
No, not exactly.
Yeah.
But spending time in nature, appreciating its power, how fragile it is, that's valuable.
It's realizing we're part of nature, not separate from it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how we build a better future. It's not just about the tech. It's about changing how we think and how we live.
One of the things you sent us was about building eco-friendly houses and using less heat.
Oh, right.
It made me think surviving in the Arctic where resources are scarce teaches you to be efficient, right? Maybe we can use those lessons for more sustainable living, even in places that aren't so extreme.
Totally. And what's cool is a lot of those eco-friendly Building ideas using the sun for heat, good insulation, natural ventilation, they're actually based on stuff people have been doing in cold climates for ages.
So we're like rediscovering old wisdom and making it work for today's problem.
Exactly. It's all about looking for inspiration in unexpected places. Like, remember Arctic alchemy? Those brewers who went north?
Oh, yeah.
They had to change their whole brewing process to make it work in the Arctic.
It's pretty incredible they pulled it off.
Yeah. It's about adapting, trying new things, working together, surviving and thriving in the Arctic or anywhere. It's all connected, you know?
It's like challenges can also be opportunities to learn and grow.
For sure. And it's about how we see those challenges, right? Do we see the Arctic as scary and dangerous or as like an adventure? Our mindset makes a difference.
This whole conversation has been super interesting. I'm starting to see the Arctic differently, not just as like this frozen wasteland, but as a place that can teach us about like the challenges we face everywhere.
I like that. It reminds us how connected we are to the planet and how we need to balance technology with respect for nature.
This feels like a good spot to take a break. We'll wrap up our Arctic deep dive and offer some final thoughts in part 3.
Definitely. See y'all back here soon.
Welcome back to the deep dive. One last time, we're hanging out in the Arctic, seeing what we can learn from this like crazy, amazing place.
We've covered a lot. Survival tips, climate change, how to find that sweet spot between tech and nature.
It's been pretty wild. I keep thinking about that soldier from the Army article, Lucas Baylor, the one who was worried about, like, not having enough body mass to stay warm.
Yep.
Most of us probably feel the same, right? We're not exactly built for nigga 65.
Haha, true. Humans are pretty fragile when you get down to it, especially in those temps. But we're also really good at coming up with solutions, like those Arctic shelters.
Yeah, 70 degrees inside, no matter what's going on outside. That's incredible.
It's kind of mind-blowing. But like you said before, it makes you wonder, are we just getting too reliant on tech? Like, are we losing touch with nature and how to handle things on our own?
And not just like the practical skills, but also that feeling of like awe, respect for the natural world.
That's a good point. If we forget that we're part of nature, not just like visitors, then it's easy to mess things up.
So it's not about conquering the Arctic or any environment, really. It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. Working with nature, not against it. And that brings us back to, like, how do we do that? How do we use technology, but also protect the planet? How do we learn from the past, but also look to the future?
It's tough. But I think for me, surviving in the Arctic or anywhere tough, it's about more than just your body, It's got to be mental and emotional, too.
Absolutely. You got to be ready for challenges, open to new ideas, work together, and remember that we're all connected.
It's about being brave enough to try new things, learn from people who know more than you, and never lose that, sense of adventure.
Well said. I think that sums it up perfectly. It's not just about surviving the Arctic. It's about surviving A&D thriving everywhere.
And that's a challenge we can all take on together.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We hope you learned some cool stuff and maybe got inspired to keep exploring and learning about the world around us.